My hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from rage. As my sister smirked across the Christmas table, she wrapped her arms tighter around her silk shawl and said it casually, like a joke. "The garage is ready for you." Everyone laughed. My mother didn't stop her. My father didn't look up. Outside, the wind howled against the metal door of the freezing garage where they planned to exile me for the night. What none of them knew, what they'd mocked for years, was that I wasn't the family failure. I was the reason their world was about to collapse. Christmas Eve at my parents' house always looked like something ripped from a catalog. Warm golden lights wrapped around the windows, the fireplace crackled just loud enough to feel cozy, and the table was set with matching plates no one was allowed to actually enjoy. From the outside, we looked like the perfect family. Inside, every smile came with conditions. I arrived early, like I always did, hoping that being helpful might buy me a little peace. My sister was already there, sitting at the head of the table beside my mother, scrolling on her phone like she owned the room. She didn't look up when I walked in. She never did. To her, I was background noise, useful only when someone needed a chair moved or a dish washed. Dinner started with forced laughter and rehearsed small talk. My father talked about work, my mother bragged about my sister's achievements, and my sister soaked it all in like applause. Every time someone asked me a question, it was followed by an awkward pause, as if no one actually cared about the answer. I learned long ago to keep my responses short. The less I said, the less ammunition they had. The food was hot, the wine was flowing, and the insults were subtle, but sharp. Little comments slipped in under the tablecloth. "Still figuring things out?" my sister asked, smiling sweetly. My mother laughed like it was harmless. My father focused on his plate. That was our routine. As the evening went on, the room felt warmer for everyone except me. Coats stayed on the backs of chairs. My sister leaned back comfortably, queen of the table, while I sat stiff, counting minutes. Christmas music played softly in the background, but it felt hollow, like a soundtrack for a lie we all pretended to believe. I didn't know yet that this would be the night they stopped pretending altogether. Dessert hadn't even been served when my sister finally decided to make me the entertainment. She set her phone down slowly, deliberately, like she was about to deliver a toast. The room quieted, not because she demanded it, but because everyone instinctively gave her space. She had that kind of authority in our family. The kind I never did. "So," she said, dragging the word out as she looked directly at me, "we had to make a little adjustment this year." Her lips curled into a smile that wasn't warm at all. My mother glanced up, then away. My father shifted in his chair. No one stopped her. She continued, louder now, enjoying the attention. "Since the house is full, we figured it makes sense for you to stay in the garage tonight." She gestured casually toward the back door, like she was pointing out a coat rack. "Don't worry," she added, laughing. We cleared some space. For a second, I honestly thought she was joking. I looked around the table, waiting for someone, anyone, to laugh it off, to say she'd gone too far. Instead, the room filled with uncomfortable chuckles. Not shock. Not protest. Just acceptance. My mother sighed and said, "It's only for one night." My father nodded without meeting my eyes. My sister leaned back in her chair, victorious. "There's an old heater out there," she said. "I think it still works. If not, just pile on some blankets." She laughed again, louder this time, and checked her phone like the moment already bored her. Heat rushed to my face, but my body felt cold. I wanted to speak, to defend myself, to remind them I was family. The words stuck in my throat. Years of swallowing humiliation had trained me well. Silence was safer. As chairs scraped and plates shifted, I stood up slowly. No one stopped me. No one followed. My sister watched me walk toward the garage door with a satisfied smirk, as if she'd just won a game she'd been playing for years. Behind me, Christmas music kept playing. Ahead of me waited concrete, darkness, and a door that closed far louder than anyone noticed. They like to say families don't choose favorites, but mine did, and they made sure everyone knew who wasn't one. From the time we were kids, my sister was the success story. Straight A's, trophies, praise that flowed like oxygen. I was the opposite. Quiet. Slow, they said. The one who needed more time to figure life out, as if adulthood came with a universal deadline I'd somehow missed. Every milestone became a comparison. When my sister got her first promotion, it was a celebration. When I changed jobs, it was a concern. "Are you sure that's stable?" my mother would ask, her voice wrapped in fake worry. My father's advice always ended the same way: "You should learn from your sister." As if I hadn't been studying her shadow my entire life. What they never saw, or never wanted to see, was how hard I worked outside their line of sight. Late nights. Early mornings. Sacrifices that didn't photograph well for family gatherings. I learned quickly that explaining myself only invited more judgment, so I stopped explaining altogether. Silence became my shield. The more I withdrew, the easier it was for them to define me. I became the one who never quite made it. The disappointment. The reminder of what could go wrong. My sister fed on that narrative. Every sarcastic comment, every public joke at my expense, reinforced her place at the top. I wasn't just beneath her, I was proof of her superiority. Holidays were the worst. They put our lives side by side like exhibits. Her achievements proudly displayed. Mine quietly dismissed. "Still working on that thing?" she'd ask, always vague, always dismissive. I'd nod, smile, and endure. What they hated wasn't my failure. It was my refusal to perform it loudly enough. I didn't beg. I didn't ask for help. I didn't collapse the way they expected me to. And somewhere along the way, that quiet persistence became threatening. They mistook my silence for weakness. My patience for submission. They never questioned why I never asked them for anything, or why I never needed their approval. By Christmas Eve, they were certain of one thing: I was nothing without them. And that certainty made what they did next feel justified in their minds. They were wrong. The garage door groaned as I pulled it open, the sound sharp and metallic, like it was protesting on my behalf. A blast of cold air hit my face instantly, stealing my breath. The warmth from the house vanished behind me, replaced by the smell of oil, dust, and old cardboard. One bare bulb flickered overhead, casting long shadows across concrete that felt hostile and unforgiving. I stepped inside and closed the door. The click of the latch echoed louder than it should have. It felt final, like a decision had just been sealed. I wrapped my coat tighter around myself and scanned the space they had decided was good enough for me. A broken chair, a stack of paint cans, a folded camping table leaning against the wall. In the corner sat a thin blanket, tossed there like an afterthought. I tried the heater my sister mentioned. It rattled once, coughed, then went silent. Of course it did. I exhaled slowly, watching my breath fog in the air, each cloud reminding me how cold the night was going to be. Somewhere beyond the walls, laughter drifted faintly through the garage door, muffled but unmistakable. I sat on the chair, the cold seeping through my clothes almost immediately. The concrete beneath my feet felt like ice. I could hear Christmas music playing inside the house, cheerful, upbeat, cruel in its contrast. It was strange how something so familiar could suddenly feel so distant. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the closed door, waiting for it to open. Waiting for someone to realize how wrong this was. It didn't happen. Minutes passed. Then more. The music continued. The laughter didn't stop. That's when it sank in. This wasn't a joke or a misunderstanding. This was where they wanted me. Out of sight. Out of mind. Frozen into silence while they celebrated without me. I pulled the thin blanket around my shoulders and leaned back against the wall. The cold was brutal, but the clarity was sharper. If this was the end they had chosen for me tonight, then it would also be the place where everything finally began to change. As I sat there in the garage, shivering beneath a blanket that barely qualified as one, my mind drifted backward, 5 years, to the part of my life no one in that house ever cared to ask about. While they were busy deciding who I was allowed to be, I was quietly surviving something much colder than this concrete floor. 5 years earlier, I had started over with nothing but a plan and an unhealthy amount of stubbornness. No safety net. No family support. Just long days that blurred into longer nights. I worked jobs I never mentioned at family dinners, learned skills in silence, failed more times than I could count, and kept going because quitting wasn't an option. It never was. There were nights I slept in my car, mornings I washed up in public restrooms, and weeks where I measured success by whether I could afford groceries. I never told them. Not because I was proud, but because I knew exactly how they'd use it. Pity dressed as concern. Judgment wrapped in advice. I chose hunger over humiliation. While my sister posted vacations and promotions online, I built something no one could see yet. I read, studied, practiced, and absorbed every mistake like fuel. I learned how systems worked, how money moved, how power hid behind polite language. I watched people who talked big fail loudly, and people who moved quietly win. Every time my mother asked, "So, what are you doing these days?" I gave a vague answer and changed the subject. It was easier to let them think I was drifting than to explain that I was laying foundations. Foundations don't look impressive until something stands on them. Those 5 years carved me into someone they wouldn't recognize. Someone patient. Someone controlled. Someone who understood that timing mattered more than validation. The colder it got in the garage, the more certain I became that everything I endured had been preparing me for this exact moment. They thought this night proved I had nothing. What they didn't know was that 5 years of being underestimated had already given me everything I needed. While my family was busy writing my story for me, I was quietly rewriting the ending. Those long nights and silent years weren't random struggles, they were deliberate. Every job I took, every skill I learned, every connection I made was part of something much bigger than survival. I wasn't drifting. I was building. I learned early that the loudest people rarely control anything. Real power moves quietly, through emails no one notices and decisions made before anyone realizes a choice existed. I studied how businesses scaled, how investments multiplied, and how influence spread without ever needing applause. While others chased titles, I chased leverage. I started small. A side project here. A calculated risk there. I reinvested every dollar instead of spending it. I lived below my means long after I could have upgraded, because freedom mattered more than appearances. Each win stayed private. Each setback stayed useful. No one congratulates foundations, but they carry everything above them. What began as one careful move turned into systems. Systems turned into momentum. Momentum turned into something stable, profitable, and quiet. I learned which rooms I didn't need to be invited into, and which ones would eventually open on their own. By the time anyone would have noticed, it was already too late to stop. The irony was painful. The more successful I became, the easier it was for my family to dismiss me. They mistook my silence for stagnation. My lack of flash for lack of progress. I let them. It kept things simple. No expectations. No interference. Sitting in that garage, my phone heavy in my pocket, I realized how perfectly their assumptions had protected me. They never asked questions that might have exposed the truth. They never pushed hard enough to see what was underneath. They were too busy being certain. I had learned something valuable over those years: never reveal your position until it's impossible to ignore. Power doesn't announce itself, it waits. And as the cold crept deeper into my bones, I knew the wait was almost over. All it would take was one moment. One message. One realization. And the people who locked me in that garage would finally understand who I really was. I was rubbing my hands together, trying to force warmth back into my fingers, when my phone vibrated in my pocket. The sound was small, almost insignificant, but in the silence of the garage it felt thunderous. I froze, staring at the dark screen for a second longer than necessary, as if whatever waited on the other side might break the fragile balance of the night. I pulled the phone out and unlocked it. One message. No emojis. No small talk. Just a name I hadn't seen in weeks, and a subject line that made my breath catch. Are you available tonight? That was it. No explanation. No context. Just 6 words that carried weight my family would never understand. I leaned back against the cold wall, suddenly unaware of the temperature. My mind raced through possibilities, calculations, consequences. This wasn't a casual check-in. This was timing. Perfect, almost cruel timing. Of all nights, of all moments, this message chose now. I typed a response, erased it, then typed again. Calm. Controlled. No desperation. Yes. I am. I hit send and locked the screen, my heart pounding harder than it had all evening. The garage felt smaller somehow, like it was holding its breath with me. Less than a minute later, the phone buzzed again. Good. We're finalizing everything. No exclamation marks. No reassurance. Just certainty. I closed my eyes and let out a slow breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Inside the house, I could hear glasses clinking, laughter rising and falling, completely unaware that something had shifted. The power balance they were so comfortable with had just cracked, and they didn't even feel it yet. I looked down at my phone, the screen reflecting faintly off the concrete floor. For the first time that night, I smiled. Not out of spite. Not out of anger. But out of clarity. The cold didn't disappear. The garage didn't get warmer. But suddenly, none of that mattered. Because while my family thought they had reduced me to nothing, the world outside that door was quietly moving in my favor, and there was no stopping it now. Inside the house, the mood shifted so subtly at first that no one noticed. My sister was mid-laugh, leaning back in her chair, when her phone vibrated against the table. She glanced at it lazily, expecting nothing more than a holiday text. The smile faded just a little. She frowned and unlocked the screen. "What is it?" my mother asked, already annoyed that attention had drifted away from her perfect evening. "Nothing," my sister said quickly, but she was already rereading the message. Her fingers hovered, uncertain. A second vibration followed. Then a third. Color drained from her face so fast it was impossible to miss. My father noticed next. "Is something wrong?" he asked, finally looking up from his plate. My sister didn't answer. She stood abruptly, chair scraping loudly against the floor, and walked toward the kitchen, phone pressed tightly in her hand like it might explode. My mother followed, whispering urgently. Voices dropped. The laughter stopped. A minute later, my sister came back into the dining room, eyes darting toward the garage door before snapping away. She cleared her throat. Did you talk to anyone tonight?" she asked the table, forcing a laugh that didn't land. No one answered. Another phone buzzed, this time my father's. He checked it, frowned, then checked it again as if the words might change. "That's strange," he muttered. "Why would they be asking about that tonight?" My mother's face tightened. "Asking about what?" she demanded. Before he could answer, my sister's phone rang. She stared at the screen like it was an accusation. When she finally answered, her voice was too high, too polite. Yes, we're together. No, I don't think so. Her eyes flicked again toward the garage. The room filled with an unfamiliar tension. Conversations died mid-sentence. Plates sat untouched. Christmas music played on, cheerful and oblivious, mocking the unease spreading through the room. Something was wrong. Everyone could feel it now. And slowly, horrifyingly, they all began to realize the same impossible thought. Whatever was happening, it had something to do with me. At first, they tried to rationalize it. My sister paced the living room, phone pressed to her ear, nodding too fast as if agreement might make the problem smaller. My father sat stiff at the table, scrolling through emails with a deepening frown. My mother stood frozen near the counter, arms crossed, watching the two of them like she was waiting for someone to explain reality to her. Say that again, my sister whispered into the phone. You're sure? Her voice dropped. Tonight? She ended the call without saying goodbye. For a moment, no one spoke. Then my father cleared his throat. That name keeps coming up, he said slowly. The same one. He looked up, uneasy. Do you know who that is? My sister swallowed. Everyone does, she said. They don't just call you. They don't ask questions. Her confidence from earlier in the night was gone, replaced by something raw and unfamiliar, fear. My mother scoffed, trying to regain control. You're overreacting. It's Christmas Eve. But even she glanced toward the garage door as if expecting it to open on its own. My sister pulled up an article on her phone and shoved it toward my father. Headlines. Numbers. Phrases like silent partner and controlling interest. My father's eyes widened as he read. That can't be right, he muttered. Why would they be involved with us? That's what they asked, my sister said quietly. Who we were connected to. The room felt smaller, heavier. Every sound echoed, the ticking clock, the hum of the fridge, the distant wind outside. My mother finally whispered the question no one wanted to ask. Why would they think we're connected to them? No one answered right away. My sister's gaze drifted again toward the garage. Her face went pale. Because someone told them, she said. Or because someone is. The implication settled like ice. A name they'd heard in business news, whispered in industry circles, suddenly sat between them at the table. Not as a rumor, but as a possibility. And for the first time that night, my family felt something I'd lived with for years. Uncertainty. The kind that makes you realize you never really knew the person you just locked outside. The realization didn't arrive all at once. It crept in slowly, like frost spreading across glass. My sister was the first to connect the dots. She stared at her phone, then at the garage door, then back at the screen, as if hoping one of them would deny what the other was saying. No, she whispered. That doesn't make sense. She laughed once, sharp and hollow. It can't be them. It can't be you. She didn't say my name out loud. Somehow, that made it worse. My father leaned forward, elbows on the table, rereading the same message for the third time. They asked for confirmation, he said quietly. They asked if the contact was you. His voice cracked on the last word. My mother shook her head, backing away as if the thought itself might touch her. That's impossible, she said. We would have known. We would have seen it. She stopped short, realization flickering behind her eyes. Wouldn't we? Silence swallowed the room. Every memory began replaying differently. My vague answers. My refusal to ask for help. The years I never explained myself. What they'd labeled as failure suddenly looked like discretion. My sister's face twisted, panic breaking through her denial. You don't even dress like someone like that, she snapped, as if appearance could undo reality. You never talked about work. You never, her voice faltered. That was the point, my father said softly. He stood up slowly, like the floor beneath him had shifted. They don't advertise. My mother covered her mouth. We put them in the garage, she whispered, the weight of the sentence crushing the room. Another message came in. My sister read it aloud, hands shaking. They're asking why you're not responding. She looked up, eyes wide and desperate. They want to speak to you. Now. The house felt colder than the garage ever had. Pride drained away, replaced by fear and regret, neither of which fit neatly into apologies. My sister moved first, rushing toward the back door. She stopped with her hand on the handle, hesitating like a child afraid of punishment. We didn't know, she said to no one in particular. We didn't know. But deep down, they all understood the truth. They didn't know because they never bothered to look. The garage door opened slowly, the hinges squealing in protest. Cold air rushed into the house, mixing with the warmth they'd enjoyed all evening. My sister stood in the doorway, her confident posture gone. She wrapped her arms around herself like she was the one freezing now. There you are, she said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We were just looking for you. Her gaze flicked to the blanket around my shoulders, then away. Guilt flashed across her face, quickly buried beneath urgency. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You didn't have to take it seriously, she said. It was just for the night. You know how things get during the holidays. The excuses tumbled out clumsily, nothing like the sharp precision she'd used to humiliate me earlier. I didn't respond. I just looked at her. That seemed to unsettle her more than anger ever could. Her phone buzzed again. She jumped. They keep calling, she said, eyes darting nervously. They're asking questions. Important ones. She swallowed hard. Why didn't you tell us? Tell them what? That they were wrong about me. That I'd built something they couldn't imagine. I waited, letting the silence stretch. She shifted her weight, clearly uncomfortable without control. I'm sorry, she said suddenly. The word sounded foreign coming from her mouth. I didn't mean it like that. We just assumed, her voice trailed off. She didn't finish the sentence because finishing it would mean admitting everything. She stepped closer, her tone changing. Softer. Calculated. We can fix this, she said quickly. You don't have to stay out here. Come inside. Let's talk. Let's clear things up before anyone makes a mistake. The irony was almost painful. She wasn't apologizing for banishing me to the cold. She was apologizing because she needed something from me now. I pulled the blanket tighter and met her eyes. Calm. Steady. Unmoved. For the first time in her life, she had no leverage. And she knew it. Her voice cracked as she whispered, please. My sister stepped aside, and my parents appeared in the doorway like hesitant guests in their own house. My mother was first, her face tight with worry she hadn't worn all evening. My father followed, hands in his pockets, avoiding my eyes the way he always did when he knew he was wrong. There's no reason for you to be out here, my mother said, her voice suddenly gentle. Too gentle. It's freezing. This was all a misunderstanding. She reached for the blanket around my shoulders, as if fixing my comfort could erase what they'd done. My father cleared his throat. Why didn't you tell us how you were doing? He asked. Not are you okay, how convenient. The question shifted the blame neatly back onto me, just like always. If I'd spoken up, if I'd explained myself, maybe none of this would have happened. I finally stood, the cold biting into my legs, and looked at them. You never asked, I said quietly. My mother flinched. That's not fair, she replied quickly. We always wanted the best for you. Her eyes filled with tears, right on cue. We just didn't realize things were like this. She gestured vaguely, as if success were something accidental that had happened to me. My father nodded, seizing the opening. Families support each other, he said. That's what this is. We stick together. The words sounded rehearsed, like something he'd heard in a movie but never practiced. From inside the house, phones continued buzzing. The pressure was building, creeping into the garage like the cold. My mother lowered her voice. You don't want this getting out of hand, she whispered. People are involved. Important people. There it was. The truth slipping through the cracks. This wasn't concern. It was fear. I stepped past them toward the door, forcing them to move aside. They looked relieved, mistaking my motion for surrender. My mother reached for my arm. We can talk inside, she said. We can fix this. I stopped and turned back to them, calm as ever. You already decided where I belong tonight, I said. I'm just deciding how much that costs you. Neither of them had an answer that I stepped through the doorway slowly, not because I was hesitant, but because I wanted them to feel every second of the shift. Warm air wrapped around me again, carrying the scent of food and pine, but it didn't feel comforting anymore. It felt borrowed. Temporary. The room went silent as I entered. Conversations stopped. My sister stood off to the side, watching me like someone who just realized the rules of the game had changed. My parents hovered behind me, unsure whether to follow or stay out of the way. No one offered me a seat. I didn't ask for one. I walked to the table and rested my hands on the back of an empty chair, grounding myself. My phone buzzed in my pocket again, but I ignored it. Let it wait. Everyone else already was. You don't have to stand, my mother said quickly. Sit down. You must be exhausted. Her concern felt sudden and fragile, like glass. I'm fine, I replied. 2 words. Calm. Final. My sister swallowed hard. We didn't know, she said again, quieter this time, like repetition might turn it into truth. If we had, things would have been different. I looked at her then, really looked. No, I said evenly. They wouldn't have been. The honesty in my voice made her flinch. My father cleared his throat. Let's not do this tonight, he said. It's Christmas Eve. He gestured around the room, desperate for normalcy. We can talk about everything later. That's exactly why we're doing it now, I replied. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, placing it face down on the table. The sound echoed louder than expected. People are waiting, I said. And I won't keep them waiting for long. My sister's eyes widened. My mother pressed her lips together. The balance of power, once so effortless for them, now felt unstable, fragile. I straightened, finally taking a seat, not because I was invited, but because I chose to. For years, I continued, you decided who I was without asking. Tonight, you get to listen. No one interrupted. No one dared. For the first time in that house, I wasn't the problem to be managed. I was the person in control. I finally turned my phone face up on the table. The screen lit the room faintly, and every set of eyes followed it like it might explode. I didn't rush. I never raised my voice. I didn't need to. Calm had become its own weapon. They've been trying to reach me for the last hour, I said, tapping the screen once. Not to chat. Not to negotiate. To confirm something. I paused, letting the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. Whether I was still connected to all of this. My sister shook her head, desperate. You could have said something, she whispered. At any point. I did, I replied. Just not to you. I unlocked the phone and read one message aloud. Not the details. Just the name at the top. My father stiffened. My mother inhaled sharply. My sister went pale. The reaction told me everything. They knew exactly what that name meant. I'm not here to embarrass anyone, I continued evenly. You've done enough of that on your own. My gaze lingered on my sister just long enough for her to look away. I'm also not here to save anyone. My father leaned forward. What do they want? He asked quietly. The truth, I said. And a decision. I typed a short reply. No explanation. No emotion. Just confirmation. I hit send and set the phone back down. Outside, the wind rattled the windows. Inside, something invisible snapped. My sister stood abruptly. You can't do this, she said, her voice breaking. This affects all of us. That's the point, I answered. No shouting followed. No dramatic declarations. The consequences didn't need volume. They were already in motion, contracts reconsidered, calls redirected, assumptions shattered. All from one quiet confirmation they never thought I was capable of making. My mother sank into a chair, stunned. My father stared at the table like it might give him answers. My sister paced, hands trembling, stripped of the confidence she'd worn like armor all her life. I stood up, pulling my coat back on. I'm leaving, I said simply. Not because I have to. Because I want to. At the door, I paused. You didn't lose anything tonight, I added calmly. You just learned what it costs to underestimate me. I stepped outside into the cold once more, but this time, I wasn't the one freezing. Christmas morning arrived quietly. No dramatic fallout. No angry calls. Just a stillness that felt heavier than any argument ever could. I woke up somewhere warm, sunlight spilling across the room, my phone resting untouched on the nightstand. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the urge to check it immediately. Messages waited, of course. Missed calls. Voicemails left too late to matter. I scrolled past them without listening. Whatever needed to be said had already been said the night before, without shouting, without cruelty, without me having to explain myself one last time. Back at my parents' house, I knew the mood would be different. The tree still stood. The presents still sat unopened. But the illusion had cracked. Every ornament, every light would now carry the memory of the night they learned the truth. Some realizations don't fade with sleep. My sister would wake up replaying every word she'd said to me over the years, wondering which ones had sealed her fate. My parents would sit at the table in silence, trying to rewrite history into something kinder. None of it would change what happened. Later that morning, my phone buzzed again, this time with confirmations. Decisions finalized. Paths closed and others opened. The world moved on, indifferent to family traditions and holiday schedules. Power rarely waits for the right moment. I poured myself coffee and stood by the window, watching people hurry past with wrapped gifts and forced smiles. Somewhere, my family was doing the same, pretending this Christmas was normal. It never would be again. What they took from me that night in the garage wasn't dignity, it was comfort. And comfort, I'd learned, is easy to survive without. What I gained instead was clarity. About who they were. About who I was. About what I would never tolerate again. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel guilt. Just calm. By the time the sun climbed higher, the garage no longer mattered. It had done its job. It showed me exactly where I stood, and exactly how far I'd outgrown that place. Some families celebrate Christmas with forgiveness. I celebrated mine with freedom. And that gift, unlike theirs, was finally mine to keep.